Summary of the Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. In the early 1920s, Howard Rourke, a student at the elite Stanton School of Architecture, is kicked out because he won't change the way he designs. The dean tells him that the board will think again about expelling him if Rourke changes his designs to include more traditional styles. Rourke says he has learned everything he can at the school and won't change. He wants to go to New York and work for Henry Cameron, who used to be a famous modernist builder but is now a drunkard who has lost his reputation. Rourke never questions his own skills or choices, so he is sure that Cameron is a talented builder no matter what other people think. Rourke has lived at Stanton in a boarding house run by Peter Keating's mother. The two young men couldn't be more different. Keating is at the top of his class and is about to graduate. He has won a scholarship to Paris and has a job offer from Guy Franken's famous design firm in New York. Rourke doesn't care about the people around him, but Keating is very self-conscious and always wants to be liked. He doesn't trust himself very much, so he asks Rourke for help with his architecture work and for tips about whether to take the grant or the job. Rourke is surprised that Keating would need to ask someone else to make his choices for him, but he does give him good advice that helps Keating choose the job in New York. Keating tries to get along with the partners at his firm, especially Franken, and plots his way to the top, even though he is still not confident in his work. When he feels bad about being a manipulator, he goes to see his girlfriend Catherine Halsey, whom he loves very much. He is shocked to find out that her uncle is the famous reviewer Ellsworth Toohey. Keating wants to win a famous design competition because he thinks it would make him a better builder, and he asks Rourke for help. Keating also goes to see Lucius Heyer, who is a partner at the company, to try to scare him into retiring so that Keating can be made a partner. Heyer is already in bad health, but Keating's cruel behavior toward him causes him to have a stroke and die, making Keating feel like he killed Heyer. He does become a partner at the company, and he also wins the design competition, which makes him very famous. Keating also goes after Guy's daughter, Dominique Franken. He thinks that her beauty and money will boost his reputation, but Dominique tells him in a cold way that she would only marry him to punish herself. Rourke, on the other hand, has worked for Cameron, gained his respect, and learned a lot from him. Cameron has a stroke and decides to retire. Rourke works for a short time at Keating's firm before Franken fires him because he won't design a building in the classical style. He then goes to work for another company, but because he won't bend on his design ideals, he gets fired again. Rourke is hired by newspaper writer Austin Heller to build him a house, and Heller likes his style. Rourke then starts his own office. But in the end, Rourke has to shut down because he doesn't get many jobs after the Heller house. When he's almost hired to build a bank with a classical appearance, Rourke says no because that's not his style. He makes a living by working at a rock mine in Connecticut. There, he meets Dominique Franken, whose father owns the mine. Both of them are very interested in each other. One night, Rourke goes to Dominique's house and makes her have sex with him against her will. He then leaves without even telling her his name. Soon after that, he gets a letter from a businessman named Roger Enright who wants to hire him as his builder. He then goes to New York City. Dominique can't stop thinking about Rourke, but she finds out that he has suddenly left the mine and doesn't know how to find him. Back in New York, Toohey writes a piece for the Banner newspaper in which he praises Keating's work. This makes Keating part of a larger group of people who like Toohey. Dominique sees pictures of the Enright house and is very pleased by it, but she and Toohey both agree that it is too good for the world. Austin Heller asks Rourke to a party and says that it might help him get more business. Rourke at first says no, but when he hears that Dominique will be there, he changes his mind. Dominique finds out at the party that the man she knew at the quarry is Rourke and that he designed the Enright house, which she loves. She makes it her goal to get rid of him because she is afraid that the world will ruin his work because it is so good. She starts throwing parties where she promotes Keating as an architect and takes jobs that Rourke could have gotten. Toohey helps her because he also wants to hurt Rourke. He hates people who are unique and talented. Even though Dominique did what she did, Rourke knows why she did it and doesn't hold it against her. Even though everyone thinks they hate each other, the two start sleeping together regularly. Toohey plans for Rourke to get a job building a temple for a religious man named Stoddard. This is a way for Toohey to get rid of Rourke. He knows that Rourke's vision will upset Stoddard, so Toohey sends him on a long trip and tells him to come back when the temple is finished. Rourke builds a shrine to the human spirit. At the center of the temple is a figure of a naked Dominique. When Stoddard comes back, he is angry because the church doesn't look like any other church in the world. He sues Rourke. Dominique tries to support Rourke's work in the banner, but she ends up getting fired. She tells Keating that she is ready to marry him because she is tired of the world. Even though Keating knows they don't love each other, he takes the chance. He breaks his promise to marry Catherine Halsey and leaves her. Rourke's finances have been destroyed by the Stoddard Temple, and since the Great Depression is coming, he can't get any more jobs. The banner's owner, Gail Wynand, wants to hire an architect, and Toohey offers Keating. Toohey tells Wynand that he should meet Dominique, Keating's wife, before he decides, and sends him a figure of Dominique from the Stoddard Temple. When Wynand and Dominique meet, they get along right away. They both seem to care about people and love tall buildings. Wynand tells Keating that in return for his wife, he will give him the commission, and Keating accepts. Wynand and Dominique go on a trip, and Wynand asks Dominique to marry him there. Dominique understands that, even though she likes him, he is in charge of the Banner, a disgusting newspaper that played a big part in bringing down Rourke. She thinks that Wynand would be even worse than Keating, so she agrees to marry him. She finds Rourke, who is building a store in a small town in Ohio, and tells him about her wedding to Wynand. Rourke tells Dominique that he'll wait for her until she stops letting the outside world affect her so much. Even though she had doubts, Dominique ends up happy with Wynand. He likes the same things she does and has the same ideas about the world, but he is even more pessimistic than she is. In fact, he has made it his life's work to show that no one is honest by bribing and threatening people who are meant to be honest into giving up their ideas. Toohey feels very threatened by Dominique and Wynand's sudden decision to work together, so he is slowly bringing Wynand down through articles in another magazine called New Frontiers. Dominique also tries to tell Wynand about Toohey's power at the Banner offices, but Wynand doesn't listen to her. Wynand looks for an architect when he wants to build a house for himself and Dominique. He likes Rourke's work a lot. Wynand doesn't know that Dominique and Rourke ever dated. He talks to Rourke about the project without Dominique's knowledge, and even though Rourke thought he wouldn't like Wynand, the two of them hit it off right away. Wynand can tell that Rourke is honest, so he tries to get him to promise that after he builds him a house, he won't make any more great, original buildings. He tells Rourke that he could ruin his job, but Rourke isn't scared, and the two of them end up laughing about it. They become friends, and it's hard for Dominique to get used to the new situation. As an engineer, Keating is having a hard time. His company has lost money, and he is seen as an old-fashioned traditionalist at a time when innovation is in style. He is no longer Toohey's favorite. In fact, Toohey tells him that the only reason he liked him was because he was average. When Keating hears about the Cortlandt housing project, he is excited because he wants to do important work. He asks Toohey to help him get the commission. Keating isn't sure about how good he is at building, so he asks Rourke to help him plan the job. Rourke is interested in the difficulties of the project, which has to be built on a small budget, so he decides to help Keating if Keating promises to build it exactly the way he plans. Toohey hails Keating's work when he sees the drawings, even though he knows right away that Keating did not make them. Rourke and Wynand go on a cruise together, but when Rourke gets back, he finds that the Cortlandt buildings have been completely changed from how he planned them. So he blows up the apartment building. A scandal starts, and while Wynand is trying to protect Rourke in the Banner, Toohey has taken over fully. He fires Toohey, and most of his other employees quit in support of Toohey. Wynand tries to keep the paper going with the help of Dominique and a small staff, but he soon gives up and apologizes to Toohey in public. Wynand has hurt Dominique's feelings. She finally agrees with Rourke that the world has no control over them, so she goes looking for him so they can be together. Rourke is going to court because he blew up the Cortlandt houses. Tui's fans say that he is self-centered and arrogant, but Rourke defends himself and talks movingly about artistic integrity and the American idea that everyone should try to be happy. He is set free. Roger Enright buys the site in Cortlandt and asks Rourke to build it again. Wynand asks him to build a building in Hell's Kitchen that will represent how high people can go. Rourke and Dominique get married, and she goes to see him at the building site, where he is proudly standing on top of the skyscraper's steel frame.
About the author. Alisa Zinovievna Rosenbaum, who became Ayn Rand, was born in St. Petersburg, Russia. She started writing books when she was 10 years old, and she was interested in politics from a young age. In high school, she decided she didn't believe in God and instead put her faith in science. At this time, the Bolsheviks were in charge of Russia. They took her father's pharmacy business and gave the family almost nothing in return. She started writing under the name Ayn Rand when she was in college. Rand came to the United States in 1926 to visit family. She later said that when she saw the skyline of Manhattan, she'd cried tears of splendor. She chose to stay in the US and become a screenwriter. She went to Hollywood, where she met her husband, Frank O'Connor. She tried to bring her family from Russia to the US, but they were not allowed to come. Rand kept writing scripts, plays, and stories, but The Fountainhead, which she worked on for 7 years and came out in 1943, was her first big hit. It made her famous and gave her a good income. In 1949, it was turned into a movie, for which Rand wrote the script. She moved to New York in 1951, and a group of her fans who met at her house often to talk about ideas and politics was jokingly called the Collective. Atlas Shrugged, which Rand wrote in 1957, was a bestseller despite getting many bad reviews. It was Rand's last work of fiction. She took the ideas she had explored in her fiction and turned them into a philosophy she called objectivism. She defined its core as the idea of man as a heroic being, with his own happiness as the moral purpose of his life, productive achievement as his noblest activity, and reason as his only absolute. She kept explaining and expanding on objectivist ideas by giving talks at colleges and writing for objectivist magazines. In 1982, she died at her home in New York City from a heart attack.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.